further discussion? Ms. Cox.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also wanting to speak in favour of this. I'm also really proud of the work that Council have done so far on the previous Climate Mitigation Plan. I think we've already done quite a lot of the heavy lifting of some of the things that need to happen earliest. In particular, you'll notice in the report the graph that shows our energy use over the last couple of years, which, while the emissions from the tip have been increasing across the other areas of Council, they have been reducing, but that is about to reduce quite significantly more in the next year as the impact of us switching to renewable energy comes online. And that's a really important and big emissions reduction early on in the piece to give us a little bit more time to deal with the difficult things like the emissions from the tip, which are not going to be easy. And I can't actually see a pathway where we're likely to be able to capture all of those emissions by 2030. And I think part of the conversation for us over the next couple of years is what we do about that. Offsets have been largely discredited for not necessarily having a great amount of emissions abatement. And so potentially, you know, I think this conversation should include things that Council ourselves can do, like building more renewable electricity than we need to use ourselves, for example, as a way of offsetting those emissions from the tip. Not suggesting that as a one and only solution, but I think that needs to be part of that more complex conversation about what we do about those things that are truly very difficult to remove. Difficult to remove those emissions. I know there's a couple of things in here about empowering communities is a really big theme. And I think it's really important that in that empowering communities, it's not just telling people what to do, telling people what they can do, but also enabling them and making it possible. And there is a really big role for Council in ensuring that people can have all electric homes, making sure that the electricity connections that they have in their kitchens are good enough that they can have induction stoves, making sure that new buildings, particularly apartments, are equipped with electricity in car parks and basements so that people can switch to electric vehicles. Because when you build an apartment building, it's going to be there for the next 50, 70, 80 years. And so the decisions we're making now are going to be with us for a really long time. And it's going to be a big and expensive retrofit and difficult for people, especially in strata, to make that shift. And it's probably coming closer to the next 10 years than the next 50 years. In terms of leadership and advocacy, I think we do have a really important role here as well, especially with the offshore wind zones that are being proposed off our coast. This is where the rubber really hits the road in terms of energy transformation. It's come here to our city. And I really would like to acknowledge the work of our federal member for Cunningham, Alison Byrne, for the leadership that she has shown in this. It's not easy. Managing change is not easy. Talking about big change like that with the community is not easy. And she really has shown her support for renewable energy, and I think credit where credit's due. It's too big and too important to play political games on this, and we really need to bring the community with us, and by being unified on that is a really important way that we can do that. Just back to the tip for a moment, the diversion rate of 50% is really impressive that we've been able to do so far. Unfortunately, the emissions from the tip are still rising. There's both legacy emissions from landfills that are already there, and there is still material coming into the tip that's creating emissions. And so while the diversion rates are really good and something that we should be proud of, as I mentioned, that is still going to be a difficult problem for us going forward. Now that we've made the shift to renewable energy already, I think one of the things that we need to turn our minds to in the next couple of years is plants and equipment. 2030 is going to be here before we know it. It's only 7 years away. And so we really should be looking at what are the plant and equipment that we can shift to electric right away. Anything with a depreciation life of more than 7 years, really we need to be looking at the electric models that are available now. And certainly things that have a shorter life than that, they're still going to create emissions reductions right now. So that's things like mowers, chainsaws, fleet cars, all of those things that can be switched right now because we do have renewable energy, and so that is immediate emissions reduction costs. The final thing I want to touch on is the costs of climate mitigation versus the costs of adaptation. We've had a really difficult couple of years, as have councils everywhere, dealing with the fallout from those incredible rains and the damage done to our roads. It looks like another really hot season. I'm in a mild personal panic with the bushfire situation in Kangaroo Valley tonight. And, you know, it's quite possible that we see further damage to our infrastructure. But I think it's really important that we don't become distracted on spending more money on cleaning up climate disasters than we do on treating the root cause of it. And so we need to keep our eye on reducing emissions as well as cleaning up from those disasters, because that is the long-term way that we're going to keep a safe climate for our city, is by acting early and doing the things to cut our emissions in time. But big thank you to the staff and a big thank you to the community for engaging around this. And I think we've come a really long way in the last 7 years, or the amount of time that I've been on this council.
Councillor Aitkin.
I support the majority of this climate change mitigation plan. Council has done some fantastic and well-considered work to date with regard to actions that council can impact in this area. The staff have put forward so far areas of focus and benefit, and to be able to future-proof the Wollongong LGA against the risks and costs that arise out of the changing policy and market conditions relating to climate change. Some examples of this are the excellent work negotiating Council's substantial electricity contract well into the future to minimise as best as possible the rising cost of power. Some other great work is the vast quantity of work that's been done to mitigate the costs and future costs of the need to process and deal with waste, which is ongoing. For the most part, Council is focused on council operations and on educating and empowering residents to take part in emissions reduction of their own volition. It should be noted that mentioned in this plan that is about to go on exhibition is the intent to use and combine the Wollongong Integrated Transport Strategy, the City Movement Centre Movement in Place Plan, and the Wollongong Cycling Strategy. I urge the community to read carefully and provide feedback on their thoughts regarding the future of access of cars to the CBD and its immediate surrounds. With these policies being included as part of working towards the Climate Change Mitigation Plan, it will most certainly mean that the ease of access for cars and parking are pushed out as much as possible and other modes of transport prioritised. If you want the public to be able to access your business, if you want to be able to easily move around as you pick up your children and ferry them to their after-school activities, and you don't want time added to your commute, then please feedback and tell us what you think, what you want and what you don't. It's also important that households have the choice of whether to install gas connections in their new homes. Although the council voted to continue to support this choice, we can see from the ongoing discussions that council will be pressured again to take away this choice. So please get online and give us your thoughts on this plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pingamini.